Tombstone, Arizona. What can you say about Tombstone that hasn't already been said in the 24 or so movies that have been made about it? Today it's a touristy ghost town where everyone is met with equal enthusiasm. A fun place where you could stand in the exact spot where slow-moving people died. And visit the graves where slow-moving people got themselves buried. You can go to see historic artwork disguised as half-naked women. Take a mine tour of where Black Lung came from and not have to read a single cigarette label warning. See any one of a number of Wild West shootouts where Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday always get their man. Go visit the real OK Corral where the Earps and Doc Holliday faced down the Clantons, which, by the way, was on the other side of that door out there in the middle of the paved street, but if they put it out there, they couldn't charge admission for it. These mannequins have been here so long that their boots are curled up and they look like leprechauns. Afternoon or night, entertain yourself with the bands and drink specials. Just remember, even though he's not Virgil Earp, they still got a town marshal. No drinking and driving. As the sun falls, you can take any one of a number of ghost tours. They have that one where you ride around on the trolley like most other places, and they point out where the paranormal activity is supposed to be at. My opinion is if you got to ride on something and have somebody point out paranormal activity to you, you should have stayed in the saloon where they had the drink specials. After enough of them, you'll see your own activity anyway. There is also an evening tour that meets inside the OK Corral and walks you around different parts of town. In all fairness, I did not take this tour, so I can't report on it one way or another. The tour that we took is the one that meets in the evening hours inside the Birdcage Theater, and I believe is the tour that most people do take when they're there. You would have to call and check on the dates and times for this tour, but at least when we were there on the weekends, it met 2 to 3 times on a particular evening. And how it works is like this. You pay $20 per person, and you get to go sit on the backstage of the Birdcage Theater with 19 or 20 other people in complete darkness, hoping that you get your money's worth one way or another. You also get to see historic artwork, masquerading as half-naked women. This one is of Fatima. Being erected of stone, the Birdcage Theater is the only structure in Tombstone which escaped the ravages of fire. The interior of the building is exactly as it was during the 1800s when the Earps and Doc Holliday played poker here. The cribs where the prostitutes plied their trade are still there, along with the more recent addition of Cowboy John mannequins. Our guide for the evening was Nova, a longtime employee of the Birdcage Theater. Perhaps you've seen her before on some of the ghost hunting themed shows. She's gracious and a good storyteller, although some of her stories sound, well, a little bit too rehearsed for my taste. She will show you this press thing, and I can't recall what it was that this press thing does, but she'll tell you about how sometimes it's found screwed up and sometimes it's found screwed down, and then she'll demonstrate that when the screw is moved, it makes this loud squeaking noise which can be heard throughout the entire property, and nobody ever hears it squeaks, they just notice that it's gone up and down. We watched her demonstrate it, and some of us tried it ourselves, and sure enough, it squeaks very loud. Once everybody else had moved towards the backstage, Jan and I hung back, and we tried it by ourselves. What we found was that when screwed in one direction, it squeaks very loudly, but when screwed the other direction, and I can't remember whether it was up or down, it emits almost no noise at all. I believe it could easily be manipulated. That's not to say that they are manipulating it for the paying public, but if it can be manipulated, then it's not much proof. You'll be walked downstairs into an area recently opened to the public where the world's longest poker game took place, and you'll be allowed to see the prostitution cribs that line the wall and service those gamblers. There is a viewing area where you can look in and see the inside of those cribs, and Nova will encourage you that you must use your flash on your camera in order to take a good picture. Afterwards, she will tell you that a paranormal image has frequently appeared in this mirror when a flash has been used. I took a total of 18 pictures, with and without flash, and, well, what you see is what you get. unless we consider that the streaks in the dust are paranormal. I've seen online that some people think that the image in the mirror is a face. To me, it just looks like a reflection of the water vase that's sitting in front of it based upon the canting of the mirror and the reflection that it would produce. I suppose with an active imagination, probably could be anything. So here goes. Lights out. As we sat on the backstage with 19 or 20 other strangers, most of us tried to remain very quiet and listen for any sound that was unusual or anything, any light anomalies that could be seen. Others just seemed to have a problem staying awake for the most part.
This is your area, the stage and the backstage, where you are in charge. I would like to ask your permission, if there's anyone that would like to come into this room, come up on the stage or the backstage with us. If you might allow them.
Nova spent her time trying to induce the spirits to come visit. With lights out, we were asked not to use flash photography, but she didn't say that we couldn't use infrared. I managed to photograph with this infrared camcorder for 15 minutes through the viewfinder before anybody noticed that I was actually filming.
Several people took photographs of the hair, and there was like a party over there. They were all around.
The same seat too, same room.
And what was going on?
There were orbs all around him.
Okay, so let's catch some of those orbs. Wait, there's one right there, I think.
It's with us that would like to come forward. If there's anyone that wouldn't mind letting us know that you're here, we would love to have a sign of your presence. We would be very grateful to know that you're here. We want all of you to know that it's okay to come close. Do you want to try it?
Ooh, there's another one. And another. And yet another.
The question was asked by the young man with the recorder. He said, "How many people live here with you?" She said, 9, 10.
Ooh, I got this one. It's swinging around and coming right at me.
Too cute. We also have
Wait a second. This orb seems to have wings of some kind. Yep, sure enough, it's one of those rare moth orbs.
People here, one from Phoenix and 2 from New Mexico.
Well, all is not lost. During the replay of a previous EVP session, we did manage to photograph one moving light anomaly.
Gathered quite a bit in the last couple of years.
This was not a small insect, nor does it have the appearance of airborne dust particles photographed under controlled testing. By a digital flash camera, airborne dust appears round like an orb with a gray center. Not so by an infrared camcorder. These dust particles are out of focus. You can tell because you can see the background clearly. These airborne dust particles are in focus as the background is now out of focus. Both of these tests were conducted by holding a small flashlight directly underneath the camcorder and illuminating the dust particles. If dust particles are not illuminated by an outside light source, it is almost impossible for infrared to detect them unless they are very large. Once the flashlight is switched off, the camera now focuses on the back wall and the dust particles are undetectable. If the infrared is increased, the particles are washed out even further. Perhaps to Nova's credit, this light anomaly appeared just as she was playing back a past customer's EVP recording. She interprets that recording to be saying, "I am here." Perhaps it was, again.
He says, "I am," kind of closely together, and then there's a little bit of a pause, and he draws out the word here. I am here. Is what we have determined we heard. EVPs have
Note that the background is in focus, while the orb in the foreground is also in focus. So in conclusion, what do I think? I think that if there's paranormal activity to be found in Tombstone, it's definitely going to be found here in the Birdcage Theater, the one place in Tombstone that never succumbed to fire. I'm just not convinced that sitting in a blackened room with 20 other strangers and trying to remain completely quiet is the right way to go about finding it. For my part, as long as you've driven all the way to Tombstone, you might as well drive the extra 30 miles on down to Bisbee, where you'll find some real quality grounds for investigations. It just amazes me the amount of people that I meet that claim that when you're dead like a carrot. Believe that there are no other dimensions that exist past this three-dimensional world that we live in. And yet these tours were full every night that we saw them go on. Man, I'm in the wrong line of work. So if you find yourself in Tombstone and determined to go no further, why not? Go ahead, take a shot at it. You might catch an orb. Or two.